Hey, remember me? Well, yeah, I'm back. And here we are. I am going to read about charge and discharge in the second hub. And in the notes on this video, I just put a couple page numbers of some of the previous context that has led us up to here. In chapter 2, and also in the previous chapter in the first hub, the techniques and exercises, where we get a bit into charge and discharge. Did I say techniques and exercises? Yeah. So this might even be, before I hopped on, I was thinking about in the techniques and exercises, and even the purpose of them being that, in the methodology, this particular framework is like learning each of these hubs, and each hub representing a component of a chronological developmental framework for our nervous system. And it's learning what's contained in that particular hub. It's learning about what interruptions and stressors can interfere with that. And a good place even to refer back to, if your practice starts to, it starts to build some momentum, is the human rights, in chapter 2. But so it's like we're looking at the things that interfere or impact the development of the particular hub, and then we're looking at how we adapt, like the different adaptation patterns within a hub and the resulting behaviors. And what these adaptations, whether it's shrinking or inflating, represent is just a bias for responding to stimulation that relates to the particular hub in just a default way, in a way that's actually not necessarily that's I'd call it maladapted. It's, as far as saying it's just having a program pattern reflex, so that we're not really getting access to the full dynamic within the hub. So for example, I'll use the first hub. So if we have a shrinking pattern in the first hub, and even shrinking in the second hub, which just say I don't need a lot. So when confronted with the need is to adjust ourselves by needing less. One of the things is sometimes that's appropriate. Sometimes that's going to actually be really help us make it through a tough time. But the other thing is that, the other side of the hub is being I need more. Seeking more than what is actually needed. So it's either less or more. It's never, it's not the Goldilocks. I mean, we're always going to be kind of traveling through the center of that. And what we're trying to do is get both of those so that we can really have access to, times where we're kind of shrinking and tightening the belt, so to speak, but that we can also kind of blow it out. And so, I don't think I continued the full thing with the first hub, but for a second hub, I'll use it as kind of reducing the relationship with pleasure to stay focused. And also all the stuff we've talked about in the second hub. And that the other side of that is we want to be able to have a blowout, in terms of just going have a big night out, or have a ton of fun, or just have a really great sensate experience. It can be fully enjoyed. And one of the things with a shrinking adaptation is that is going to be unlikely, or the conditions are going to have to be pretty extreme, as far as being something that's a big vacation and going to somewhere really big, or a ton of money or whatever, versus the subtleties of being able to have that expansive, really big enjoyment, off of the more simple things. So the thing is, when we get, so it's and then we look at the holding patterns, which are kind of some of the kind of consolidated, or so in the chapters you have examples of some kind of standard ones, and then you also have the shadow, which is like fear, grief, shame, like that. So when we get to techniques and exercises, it isn't about correcting ourselves, because that would kind of fly in the face of absolutely everything that Parinama is about, which is that there's nothing wrong with you. I mean, this is so, and I think that that's something that I've always felt kind of precious about conveying, which is the techniques and exercises are really about becoming really like, active, uh, and just active in our patterning. And so in each of the techniques and exercises chapters, we have foundational practices like we just went through with the tapping and with the emotional literacy, and things that are really about practices that just literally focus on like kind of comforting and like managing the experience of the hub. And then we have charging and discharging, and that's what I'm going to read about today. And charging and discharging is actually the other side of like, so when we're talking about the emotional regulation and nervous system regulation, um, I'm not going to go too deep into this here. Wow, Luke is like, I don't know, he's doing, I don't know, he's into something. Um, that what we're doing here is this is the charging and discharging is about like the stored, so when we were look in the previous chapters, techniques and exercises, and we look at the action potential, and we're talking about like when we stop a stress response before we can actually like really respond and push it through ourselves, that all of that kind of gets stuck in our musculature, like that we're like when we're freezing and we're holding back reactions, that it creates tension and rigidity. And so, and in very subtle ways. And for folks that are out there right now practicing and doing this, really knowing and experiencing what this is like, is it defies logic. To the discharge especially defies logic, because the storing of like the heldness and like finally releasing that, it like leads to like outlet, like leads to a felt and experiential sense of life that like really expands pretty far past what we can kind of like focus and comprehend, like because there's no better way to learn what a hub contains and the ripple effects than to lose at like to basically lose like adaptations within it, because it's like once those get released, um some of the energy also kind of like I guess some of like the held energy like travels up into other hubs, accessing more like creativity, accessing more energy, access like, so I might be getting a little too esoteric here on this, so I'll try to rein it in. But let's see. So here we're going to talk about the um the charging and discharging in the second hub. And what this means is like what we're trying to look at is how to restore dynamism by releasing the patterning in like somatic, like so the adaptations from the like shrinking and inflating become physical manifestations. And what we're doing is we're kind of like working with these to find some release and restore some more fluidity within ourselves. And I will tell you that it is very common for people who have these releases, and they can happen very early in a practice, which is something I've been kind of trying to reconcile. But so far, nobody has talked to me about having an experience that um, like causes distress. Like there is the sense of like, especially if you're doing it in the context of having like worked through the book, of having some notion of kind of what's happening. Um, but it's so. But the one thing, so I had, I've had people I've had so I try to be really careful about like what I just like kind of saying anything that's identifying about a person, or people. And I've had it's super super common in charging and discharging, especially in the discharging, there to be this sense that it's like there's no way that just happened. So people do the techniques and exercises in these hubs, and once they've experienced the release of it, which can be it can come in tremoring, shaking, like crying, like spontaneously, like kind of like making sounds, just releasing a lot of agitate, like however it arises and comes back out, it tends to be really organic and spontaneous. um that the aftermath of that is like pretty extraordinary, because it's like, oh my gosh, life can actually, like, this thing like the hairball. um it's like it's a direct experience with like releasing this hairball of like a programmed reflex creating a belief system, that belief system creating reality, and that reality is like we project what we expect so that the world responds accordingly, and it just strengthens the notion of what, like what our programmed beliefs are. So, or and reflexes are. So anyway, so I'm going to read a little bit, see how far we get. One of the things I think that yeah, let's just go. I'll talk more about this. So yeah. And also I might, let's see. I'm gonna see what comes up as I start to read here. So remember we just saw this. This is what, so I'll tell you about the parinama wheel of emotions. Is that like I created this from like scratch, and it was the last one, if not, it was definitely in the like last weeks, and it had always been sort of, there are a couple of these graphics and like there's aspects of this book, and we'll hit them bit by bit, but that were kind of placeholders, because it's like you kind of look at it once it's done, it's like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. But especially even just for this framework of parinama, is like it just didn't exist. So there's a lot of like like the creation of this, of really like allowing it to land, and like letting the inspiration kind of direct it. But it's kind of fun to just see that, because I worked with Sheila Parr on that, and like we went back and forth on it, and I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty good. It's nice looking. I don't know how functional it is. I do think we kind of came. I don't know if like there's the word endure in it. I don't know if that's even like was intended to be there, but anyway. But yeah, so I think it looks nice. It's on the website as like as a breathing ball. So I don't know, I need to check that out again. It's been a minute since I've like looked through the entire website, which is also great. I like the website a lot. I worked with Marinka Burns, and I think that it came out really nice. So, all right, charge and discharge. So in the second hub, I'm like really looking like a little too overly casual here. I'm gonna pull you in. Hi, come here, come closer, come closer. Okay, here we go. In the second hub, it's like reenacting a trigger, a second hub trigger. So this could be one of the this could be like exposure therapy, but it's not. I promise it's not. Okay, so in the second hub, our aim is the restoration of natural flow and movement. Thawing and increasing capacity for a shrinking adaptation restores the natural charge discharge of movement and emotion. For an inflating adaptation, we're looking to contain the expansiveness of the charge discharge. Containment is the goal for folks who tend to emote easily and expansively. Excessive and reflexive catharsis can lack self awareness and synchronization with others. So, without conscious awareness, charging and discharging can wear a deeper groove in already excessive behavior patterns. Yeah. Excessive emoting affects the people around us, so becoming aware of the physical and emotional boundary, all your feelings are happening within you, can help contain and manage overwhelm. When experiencing a surge of emotions, press pause when possible and do a safe physical discharge or journal through it. Uncontained, frequent, and intense discharging in this hub can cause unintentional harm to people around you, specifically those who don't have the power to speak up and those who do not have strong boundaries. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is one of the things I think about Parinama in general is that there's so much in here. And so all that we can really do is like in the reading it is kind of like process it and sort of accept in as much as we can in the moment. That like I still read this as like the person who's had the most exposure to it at this point in history. And I still have experience with it. It's still grow I still grow in this when I read that. Cuz even what I was just talking about, you can really if you know, I'm connecting how I was not thinking about how because I was talking about shrinking second hub because that's me. I'm a shrinking, like a shrinking. My adaptation is inclined, or when it, especially when it's stronger, significantly inclined for shrinking. But with the inflating second hub, we have the issue of the fact that, and this is also worth talking about, which is that the idea of what our integrity is and emotions can really especially like in an inflating second hub, emotion can be a really confusing thing about being like if we can't contain it. You want to talk about like the hairball, which is like a reflex and then a like rationalization, like a belief system, is that like that lack of containment, it represents like integrity, like the fact that it's like I just have to blow up in the situation. I just can't remain quiet in the face of something that is activating for me, even if it's like really harmful or hurtful to people, and quite frankly in a lot of cases not not constructive, because especially if we're confronting people at a voltage that's higher than their capacity, they're just going to like fall into their adaptations and become defensive, or they're going to rationalize you out. And so one of the things about emotional regulation is it really supports our integrity as far as having the ability to maintain our credibility by by being able to remain very coherent, patient, and clear in situations where we're like highly activated, instead of like lighting the world on fire kind of thing, which like all of a sudden everyone is like, a lot of times it creates a lot of sound and fury. And if there aren't participants in the situation that have the ability to like bring in some regulation and buffering, it just that you can have this kind of like that notion of like the circus, the chaotic dynamic that just keeps repeating, and it feels frustrating. And then you have people who are shrinking. They're like, I wish I could be that person that says everything that's on my mind, but it's like that doesn't really like totally get the job done either. So and so I'm going to make a note here too is that so I'm working on I'm going to be rolling out this 4-week class, and one of the modules, the third week, is about emotional regulation. Yeah, and the exercise in that is going to be about negotiation and conflict, and it's very much related to this because emotional contamination when we get to it here in the book, because the negotiation is in the third hub in the next chapter we're getting to, but emotional regulation itself is like one of the most critical aspects of being able to be effective in negotiation, in navigating conflict, in decision making, because when we get activated in this second hub, especially when it's unconscious, um, our greatest capabilities are undermined. Yeah, because a lot of like taking things personally as well. Because this is, I don't get into it here. Like anywhere in the book, I don't think there's ever expressly stated anything about the fact that people's behavior is not personal. But what my experience is through this practice is that becomes self-evident. So theoretically, having the notion that it's like, hey, it's not personal versus being able to directly experience that. So it actually becomes self evident in terms of like everything, in terms like with who we're interacting with. So we're going to do the accordion. I'm going to talk about this. This is really a critical part of the charge discharge, like a very deep, like in the Parinomiverse, um, part of what we're. I'm gonna read it, and then we're gonna see what kind of commentary it should exist, if any. So, okay, the accordion, focus and exaggerate. Oh yeah, I do mention who invented it. Let's see. Listen, it's a big book. I can't remember it. I can't. I mean, honestly, it. Yeah, I mean, it's like sure. Right? I mean, when people are like it's really hard, it's like, yeah, it's hard. Like it's hard for like yeah, I mean, requires constant practice, I guess. So anyway, enough of that. Okay, when a muscle feels tight, a natural inclination is to try stretching it out. But here we consider contraction to be a frozen and incomplete response to a stimulation or a stress event. See chapter 4. And that's back to the techniques and exercises about discharge there. Again, the accordion is an exercise that aims to complete the contraction and then slowly release. It's called the accordion because a full contraction needs to occur before we can get full expansion. The accordion is an essential technique in the Parinama method. I'm really glad that I provide commentary before I read. It's really like duplication that can be used throughout the body in every hub. Therapist Stanley Kellerman, an early innovator of somatic practice, told his students and patients that less is more and offered this 5-part accordion exercise. So I'm going to read this exercise and then I'm going to talk about Stanley Kellerman. Yeah. All right. So, step 1, identify the pain or discomfort. Let's see. Do I have any right now? I don't. Yeah, I don't have any. Because I might do it. So 2 is lean into and intensify the muscular tone by exaggerating it, holding it to the point of tension. So this is if you have tension, say you have tension like, let's see, actually, okay, now I'm going to talk about this. It's not exactly in here. So if you have like aching or tension, instead of pulling against it, one of the things is like looking at the inclination that it has. So if it's kind of like, oh, like you're kind of like, oh my gosh, ow. Like what we're doing is we're actually, oh my goshing out all the way in. Like we're like, so it's kind of like if we're like kind of partially hunched over and we're trying to be like, oh, I want to stretch back out. This is about kind of going into that hunched over. If like there's that like, and it's paying this very interesting type of attention to the sensation which is like, where does this actually want to go? What's the action on this? And if you have questions on this, like comment, I will answer because I don't know if that's entirely clear. Um, but so yeah, but I won't elaborate without someone prompting me. So okay, so three. Two is lean into and intensify the muscular tone by exaggerating it, holding it to the point of tension. This is page 113. Number three, move at a glacial pace and slowly release the contraction. Consider the action of a spring-loaded coil. Don't snap it back too fast or it will recoil. Now, four is pause and allow the release to settle in. Noticing any shifts without making any movements. Make a note of what you experienced and repeat it if it feels right to do so. So I think that's like, I don't know why, reading that, I'm kind of like, I don't know how like number two is like where kind of like one of the most important things about this is, yeah, I think this deserves like a little bit more. Yeah, it's not as good as it could be. This isn't as strong as it could be. So say you have tension in your neck and you keep going like, oh, to stretch it out. You're like, oh, and you do this thing where you go, there. Say like what we're gonna do here is we're gonna look at that tension that's pulling and we're gonna kind of lean into it and find that find it. And you kind of go, like there's like a little, it's like, ooh, and then squeeze into it and get a little bit of a tremor if you can. And then just slowly with breath, release yourself back. And just take note. Notice any shifts. And if you're like, all right, there's a shift, but let's, a little bit more, is like like going back in. You lean into it. And I guess I have it's still tight. It's not like, so I'm finding something in here, which is like leaning in. And then I'm not finding much of a tremor in there. Oh, there's a little bit in there. So tremor. And then it's releasing it slowly. I'm doing this with breath. Now, one of the things I'm noticing is now the other side of my neck is like actually feeling kind of like, it's feeling like a little like kind of sore and activated. So I'm going to go into this. And there's actually like quite a tremor in there. So I'm squeezing into this. Oh, there's quite a bit in there. If there's any pain, don't. It's not where we're going. And now what we're doing, slowly coming back. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Yeah, this feels like, and so one of the things with this is I'm really glad I'm doing it because I like it's actually arising something on my kitty. Does he need a little accordion? What are you doing, kitty? Is that there's actually like I can feel right now like that they're like kind of like this sense that to not move fast, to be like still. And there's a little bit of an opening, and it's kind of like it's like a it's kind of like delicate, and it feels a little bit nice. Like it feels kind of nice, and it feels kind of um delicate. So just putting my feet planting on the floor, taking another breath, and just letting that process a little bit. I'm really glad that we did this because I think this is an important thing about like the space creating in this. Even as I'm breathing now, I can feel that there's more room. It's interesting. There's still a little tension on the left side, and I think when we wrap up, I'm going to complete this on my own. It's extending into my shoulder a little bit, so I'll do that separately. But I'm going to talk a little bit about Stanley Kellman. Yeah, I'm going to talk about Stanley Kellman. So Stanley Kellman wrote some of the most very so it's interesting because where Parinama wound up, um like even inflating and shrinking is like actually there like the earliest iteration is coming out of Stanley Kellerman. And that also inspired Anadea Judith's Eastern Body, Western Mind. And I think and her notion like of this kind of I forget what her terminology is, but like she has a excessive or deficient, I think, were her terms that she uses that come from Stanley Kellman. So Stanley Kellman, and he's these like very intensely illustrated books about kind of like I would call it theory, uh, and where he like really draws out a lot of the like the presentation of how like a human being's going to show up with like the different physical adaptations. This is something, and this is also goes into like Lowen, um, like the kind of earliest pioneers, like with bioenergetics. And one of the things with like as this evolved was really getting away from the body typing stuff where it's getting, it's kind of like, look, this is how your body's going to show up with these adaptations. Because there is some correspondence, but I felt that it really, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but the direction I went into was that it's like, I just don't think anyone needs more judgmental frameworks to like assess others, because I think that's mostly how that is going to play out, is being able to see others. And while yes, I do like note these things about like how these things how the different aspects of the hubs manifest physically. um it's interesting. It's just interesting stuff. Like there's and I think, in Eastern Body, Western Mind, Anodea Judith goes into the different like physical phenotypes, like the physical like showings of um the different chakras and their like their adapted form. But um I think if there's any residual of that, it's in the holding patterns, where it's like talking about intellectualization, sort of like winding, pulling up, feeling. Um, but Anyway, but the thing, okay, I think one of I think one of the things that I want to say is like Stanley Kellerman is like really, you have people like Peter Levine that show up a lot in the book. Alexander Lowen, very, very influential, especially when we get into the fourth hub. And there's just a lot of these pioneers, huge amounts of work in this space that, yeah, it's like kind of the real secret. Remember how like the secret is like everyone knows this stuff and it's been hidden. I felt like that when I was researching when I was researching this book, where I was like, there's just these like overwhelming um, like bodies of work that incredibly brilliant people have put painstaking detail into. And so Parinam is sort of a merging of a lot of that as well, in addition to all the other things that are in here. So anyway, but the I will say that the illustrations in the book are like pretty disturbing. They're very like skillfully done, but it's like this like world of sorrow. Um where Alexander Lowen, so in the Stanley Kellerman, whereas Alexander Lowen is like it's all like very vibrant and joyful and delightful. So yeah, to each his own. All right, so I'm gonna read a little bit more. So charging, we're in now stimulating. So as you read this, try making a gentle rocking motion with your body. Many people report that this feels soothing. This is a gentle stimulation, sometimes called stimming. Repetitive movements that self-soothe, such as nail biting, knuckle cracking, foot tapping, hair twirling, fidgeting, or whistling, or gently rocking your body, as I suggest here. These common examples of stimming may seem like discharging, but notice the subtle stimulation they provide. In the first and second hubs, you charge with subtle and soothing motions. Remember that we're not going for a soothing infant and baby. Oh my God, jeez. All right, remember that we're going for soothing infant and baby energy. To charge this hub, we bring our attention to the effect of these subtle movements, focusing on the pelvis, hips, and lower abdomen. Yeah, it just feels really nice. It's a rocking chair. I mean, it's like, come on, it's like classic. So I'm going to talk this one through. I think that I'd really, honestly, I think I've been going for so long now that this is kind of like a lot, but I'm going to keep going. Yeah, at some point I want to make actual videos of these to demonstrate them, but for right now, I'm just going to, it's like really nice. Don't knock it. Do it right now, wherever you are. And if even, well, actually, we'll read this because it's going to talk about how to do it anywhere. So this is rocking, windshield, and bridge pose. So start by lying on your back with your feet planted and knees pointed towards the ceiling. Lightly massage. So this is like creating like basically like kind of like a 45-degree angle with, with your knees at the fulcrum. So lightly massage the sides of your bum, upper thighs, and lower abdomen to increase circulation. Sometimes just the contact of the lower back on the floor can feel soothing. You really want to do this. With a gentle and subtle motion, rock your body up and down towards your head and then your feet, similar to what happens when you hear a good song and your body can't help but move to the rhythm. Pay attention to your lower back and enjoy the sensation of being rocked. So this is kind of like when we're on our back, we're kind of going up and down. Like that's people have had a hard time with this one. So inhale through your nose and exhale out through your mouth for 8 rocks. So next, move both knees to the left and then to the right like windshield wipers, maintaining a comfortable range of motion 4 times back and forth. Pause and find a word to describe how your body feels and note that you're paying attention to yourself. Then bring your attention to your lower back and lower stomach. Push into the bottoms of your feet. And on an inhale, raise your bum off the floor, pelvis towards the ceiling. And on the exhale, lower your bum back down to the floor. Repeat 5 times, pulsing with the breath. On the last exhale, lower to the floor and notice any arising sensation. So as you're pushing on the bottoms of our feet, inhale up, and exhale, we lower down. We inhale up and exhale down. This will be for 3 more times, and then just let yourself rest with your bum, lower back on the floor. Next, keep your feet and shoulders on the floor and lift your bum and extend your pelvis towards the ceiling, sometimes called bridge pose, and hold for 3 full breaths. On the third exhale, bring your bum down and extend your legs out into a ginger figure position. Tune into how your body has responded. Does it feel stimulated, numb, distant? Without judgment, take a moment to observe your relationship with physical sensation and contain it with ownership. This is mine. And own your feelings and remind yourself there's no correct way to feel other than exactly how you feel right now. That's nice. Do I dare keep going? Do I dare? Do I dare? I mean, this is it. Like this is the end of the second hub chapter. I'm gonna keep going. I guess you could like just pause this if you don't want to watch anymore. Stop. So I'm gonna keep reading. So discharging, shaking. The second hub has the most famous discharge of them all, the orgasm. For some people with rigid musculature and even trauma, this can be difficult to access. The exercises here help release trapped muscular stress, but do not focus specifically on sexual release. Following are 3 specific modes of second hub discharge: shaking the body to music, discharging tension in the hips, and a gentle psoas release. So yeah, I really wanted to be mindful that in the second hub, that sexual trauma is so prevalent. And I mean, it's a cultural epidemic, and the research, the research really supports the reality, and just the epidemic of this, especially for women. So I very consciously chose to not include um, like sexually related material in this because first of all, I mean, there's an aspect of this where it's like this book wanting it to be able to be professionally like something that could be exist in a professional environment. And that even, I mean, honestly, that like even that one sentence might cross that line. But I think one of the things that saves a lot of stuff in this book that's, like, particularly loaded content is the book is just so, like, impassable for people that they don't think if they can get that far at that point, I think they're probably gonna, like, be worn down enough that they don't make a big deal about it. Oh my god, that's really funny. But anyway, like I think it's really important because even accessing the ability to really experience like sensual and sexual pleasure is about being able to stay with emotion and to a certain extent contain it within ourselves, like, and I won't and and so what this is about is like finding some of this freedom in the body, which, like, in turn, like just create, like expands the container so more is possible, without potentially being activated in a way that I don't really feel like comfortable initiating. So, um, yeah. So free dance, shake your body. So play some music and move your body. Pick a song that makes you want to move and follow where the movement wants to go. Bounce, shake, wiggle. This is dancing focused on how it feels, not how it looks. There's a concern that comes later. That's a concern that comes later in the sixth hub. Some cues can help. Start by shaking out the hands. Stand up and wiggle your body, like stomp your feet a bit, like wiggle your head. After a tough day at work, try finding the release in your body before engaging with your family. If you are becoming frustrated with a spouse or partner, try discharging a bit by shaking out your body, releasing some tension so you can have a more constructive interaction. So this is something where, like, it's kind of like, I will say, like, once this opens up, and this is something, actually, I'm not going to call this out exactly here, but this kind of fluidity, once it's very easy to be responsive to music, because once this channel opens up a bit more, if there's music playing around you, like, there, you just kind of like naturally kind of like kind of will tap into it. And it's like a nicer, it's nice. You just hear something, you're kind of like boom, ba-doom, boom, boom, ba-doom, boom. And so, like, that, just the natural reaction and response to nice feelings. But so here, like, so what this references is that if we have had tension at work, if you're in your car sitting in your driveway, that, even investing that time, you might be kind of worn down or whatever, but just even if you can't really, if you're not really at a place where you're like, I'm going to be able to enjoy music because the tension is, just even to just move a little bit of it out, like just like move it out a little bit, just get some of it. So, and even if you're like, say you're having a fight, if you can, like, go into the bathroom for a second and just give yourself that like release, because the growing of the tension, winds up becoming kind of like, experience. I'm actually not going to like speak to that. I'm going to say, try it. Okay. So the discharge bridge, abducting and adducting. So start with, this might be the longest one ever. I think we're going to hit an hour, which is kind of I guess, exciting, or like kind of new, whatever. Okay. So start with this from the supine position with feet planted and knees pointing towards the ceiling. Place a rolled up towel or yoga block in the narrowest position between your thighs. Supine position just means you're laying on the floor. It's like the same as what we were just doing before. You're laying down, your feet are on the ground, knees pointed up. Now, what we're doing is so either you can take a rolled up towel or a yoga block if you have one. I have about 1,000,000 of them. They're really easy to buy one, and they're really useful for the practices that are going to be coming up. Like a soft, squishy foam yoga block. But if you don't have one handy, like rolling up a towel, like a Swiss roll. So it just creates a bolster. So it's sort of like more like a log. So you fold it, and then roll. And so in this case, what we're doing is, like, we're putting that towel between our thighs. And so for the abduct movement inward, lift your bum into a bridge pose and squeeze the block or towel between your thighs for 2 breaths. Bring your bum to the floor for 1 resting breath and lift your bum again. Repeat 2 more times, then squeeze the block or towel. Try to find a light tremor without straining muscles. So here's what we're doing in that. We're actually trying to find that tremor again, and then release it. So this is the discharge, as we're actually like trying to discharge tension in our thighs. So using the block where we squeeze and then release. Yeah, some of these, reading them, I'm like, they're kind of like they could really use a little bit, like they benefit from some supplemental explanation. And adduction moves outward. So before removing the block, loop a yoga strap or belt around your thighs. You want a few inches of distance between your thighs. Once the loop is in place, remove the block. Next, lift your bum and squeeze outward into the strap, seeking the same tremor for 2 breaths. Release the bum down for 1 breath, then up again. If raising your bum for either exercise is too uncomfortable or causes pain, both adduction and abduction can be done with your bum on the floor. When you're finished, loosen the strap and march or stomp your feet on the ground to release any excess tension. And this means just you're kind of like flapping your feet on the ground while you're still laying down, just kind of releasing. Yeah, these really would benefit from like an actual demonstration. Sometimes slapping the palms or the hands on the floor can help with release. So it's like once you've done the adduction, and you kind of like clap, 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 clap. Feels nice. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that this is one where even in the book it would have been good to just even have a little picture or something. But if this is something where anybody wants a demonstration, just comment and we'll make it happen. Okay, so psoas stretches. The muscle of the soul, as we read earlier in an earlier reading. So fold a towel in half the long way and roll it up so it's the shape of a log, as discussed previously. Lie down in the prone position. So this is like facing downward. Apparently supine, and like, come on, Katie. Talk about like, use like just regular words. Lie down in the prone position, placing your towel roll horizontally under your upper thighs, an inch or 2 beneath your pelvis. It's if a fully rolled up towel increases your lumbar curve to an uncomfortable degree, only partially roll it. Push into the ground with a towel for a count of 3, and then relax with 3 breaths. Repeat up to 5 times and then relax for 2 minutes with the towel still under your thighs. The second hub builds from the solid ground and boundary of the first hub that creates the stable container for the flow of emotion, increased tolerance for change, and the enjoyment of unstructured pleasure and desire. Now, the baby's second hub ambivalence shifts to the more focused and determined action of a toddler as we move into the third hub. So, back with the psoas stretches, you're putting the rolled towel like kind of like a little bit beneath your pelvis, and you're pushing into it. It's very gentle. We're not doing anything too intense here. And if like these seem like they would kind of benefit from a demonstration. So I'm just going to read and then I'm going to wrap up. So here we go. We're at the end. We did it. Look at us. Accomplished people. So in chapter 6, I discuss power and individuality. Our feelings and emotions show us what sparks desire and what we want. Knowing what we want, how we feel, and containing and managing the associated emotions from the second hub support the growth and development of authentic power in the third hub. We're easily overpowered in life's negotiations if we don't know what we want, or if we simply accept what's offered. Oof. Wow. Oof. In the former example, we're easy to control and manipulate because we lack self-awareness. Oh, goodness. There it is. And in the latter, because we lack conviction. I'm reading that again. We're easily overpowered in life's negotiations if we don't know what we want, or if we simply accept what's offered. In the former example, we're easy to control and manipulate because we lack self-awareness, and in the latter, because we lack conviction. The emotional literacy and attunement in the second hub is essential for understanding and managing personal power and individuality in the third hub. We did it. We did it. I am very excited. Here we are. We've just moved over to chapter 6. And one thing I want to mention that just popped into my head was that you will notice that there is no technique and exercise that is about specifically attunement. And this is something that didn't make the cut, but will likely make it into classes, which is just doing exercises that have to do with rolling a ball back and forth. And there's an exercise which is kind of like, like how they had this summer camp thing where it's like whoever's holding the conch can talk, but we involve the ball, like, so it can be on a table or we're bouncing it to each other, which is like when you're talking, you're holding the ball and then you bounce it to the person. If you're asking a question, you can only speak when you have the ball. But what we're doing is we're kind of beginning this kind of coordination and even consciousness of how long we're holding the ball. It creates this kind of cool thing. But we didn't do it in this because I specifically chose techniques and exercises that could be done alone. Like, so this is like a self-guided thing. And a lot of the attunement stuff is about, or requires other people. So we did it. It's pretty exciting. Time to move on. Wow, it just kind of hit me. Yeah, because I'm in a third hub practice right now, so we're really catching up here. So anyway, I love you so much. I'm so grateful to have you along here. And if you have any questions, if you do want clarification on anything, please put it in the comments. I answer to anything that goes in there. Of course, any likes and interactions mean a lot to me. It just feels good to know that it feels like appreciation. I think that's what it is. I think that's the thing I'm figuring out, is that interaction is read by me as like being appreciated for this, which just feels nice. And I appreciate being appreciated. So anyway, sending you lots of love and talk to you very soon. Bye.